Great. So we're going to get started with the youth panel now. My name is Emlyn Crocker, and I am on the CB board. My pronouns are she, her, and we're going to just go ahead and hand it over to the youth with our first question. Hey, folks. So we're going to start by asking you to introduce yourselves, share your pronouns, and tell us what you do now and how you became involved in working to address the climate crisis. And anyone can start.
I am holding the mic, so I will start. My name is Anna Siegel. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm the advocacy director with Maine Youth Action and a founding member of the Maine Youth for Climate Justice Coalition. I also do a lot of work on the municipal level in my local town government, and also some more stuff on like the conservation research side of things, doing work with birds.
Hi y'all, it's so nice to meet some of you today. My name's Emmett. I use he, him pronouns. I'm from Windsor, so just outside of Augusta. I'm a sophomore at Erskine Academy. I'm a youth organizer for JMJU, and I am president of the environmental club that I founded at my school. And I think I've gotten into environmental activism in the past couple of years, and it's become a priority of my life and something I've been focusing
on. My name is Chloe Grover. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm currently the youngest member of the Otis Field Conservation Committee.
There you go. Hello? Okay, yeah. My name is Hajna Nagy. I use she, her, hers. I'm from pretty much all over central Maine, but went to Moran Cook High School and then graduated from Bowdoin College last spring. Thank you. And I'm currently now working at the Climate Initiative, which is based out of Kennebunkport, and it is essentially an environmental nonprofit dedicated to getting more youth involved in climate action. But I kind of got started in environmental activism. Honestly, it wasn't until college, which I think is something that now I'm trying to address in my work, trying to expand more opportunities for outdoor recreation and climate education to youth, or hopefully, early on. The earlier, the better. And yeah, that's me.
Hello, everyone. My name is Isi. I use she, her pronouns. I come from Bar Harbor today, but I was born in Chile and I grew up in Spain. My work with climate activism has mostly been internationally focused in the political sphere, so attending the COP25, COP26 in Madrid and in Edinburgh, working with indigenous communities and following the sustainable agriculture conversations. And from there, I developed practice that now has turned into a collective, which aims to bring together people to address resilience in communities. So we explore how different communities work in resilience and how we can bring that together. But today I'm here also representing GMJU, which is Just Me for Just Us, and I'm one of the rural youth organizers, like Emmett.
Thank you. So next, if you could tell us about a recent success or recent successes that you've seen in Maine or in your work, and also some things that you're still actively fighting for that you'd like to share.
I'm going first. So some recent successes that we've seen in the climate movement is last year on this very panel, we talked a lot about climate education. If you were here last year, you might remember that. That was a big subject, especially because there was a climate ed bill going through the legislature. So because of the work of the Maine Environmental Education Association and some amazing activists like Kosi Afiji and Amara Afiji, that bill passed. And so now there's a pilot program starting for Maine high schools to do more work with climate education. So that is a recent success that happened because of some great youth organizers and the Maine Environmental Education Association. And some things that we're still fighting for is implementation of bills like that. So when bills pass, it's great. That shows that there's community support, that shows there's political support, but that doesn't mean that they aren't just going to file it away and not do anything about it, which is really unfortunate. And so in the 2021-2022 legislative session, there was an intergenerational coalition of folks, including, I hope you don't mind, David, if I call you out, but David Gibson, Sierra Club Maine, and also Maine Youth for Climate Justice, and myself, and Representative Maggie O'Neill. A bunch of people did a lot of really great work on a bill to mandate the state to divest itself from fossil fuel assets. And so while that bill passed, great success, the recent fight that we've had is their stark refusal to implement the bill. So it's Maine PERS, the Public Employee Retirement System. Sorry, and that's who we're asking to divest from fossil fuels, and they have kind of said, and just kind of tucked that away and not listened. And so, while on one hand there's been successes such as the climate ed bill, on the other hand, even when bills pass, even when that success does happen, and we still need to fight for them to be implemented, and those fights are ongoing.
Were there any public employees or PERS participants in the room? Raise your hand. We need your help to contact them.
And we did.
Yeah, and
Great.
we have.
No, but you should.
We need to do it again.
So if you contacted Maine PERS while that bill was being passed, supporting for the passage of that bill, that's great, but we need people to contact Maine PERS again now to talk about the implementation of the bill. So new issue, separate issue, not separate, but it's the resurgence of, okay, we passed it, now let's make it happen. Sorry to derail the question with the action item.
Perfect.
But.
Never apologize for that. Okay, so we'll keep going with recent success that you'd like to share and what you're fighting for now.
A huge success I've seen, especially in like the state legislature this past year, is an abundance of bills recognizing indigenous rights and sovereignty, and also outside of that, for the like grassroots panel, I know it's coming on later, but a couple successes that I've seen in my local level is a municipal composting program and small other things in my rural communities. I believe those are equally as important, and we should all advocate for them, as those small stepping stools can amount to a much bigger and broader source of change.
Who wants to go next?
Yeah, from my and also echoing Emmett's point, like the support for the Wabanaki communities here has been big in the last year, but I think there's so much more room for just bringing that forward and truly like implementing in our schools, like on the education that needs to happen, because I've participated and collaborated with Wabanaki Reach in all the years, and most recently with like some individuals who are doing their own training, like Elizabeth Neptune. And it's so important how much that history and the history that we are part of as we're in an unceded Wabanaki land needs to be truly shared and talked about. It needs to be something that we engage with instead of something that we see and feel so bad about and feel like, oh, this is horrible. But okay, how do we move from that sentiment, and how do we implement an awareness, a partnership, and not only that, but also an education for the younger generations and ourselves, as we're still engaging in these spaces, and we still have the power to select people who will be like pushing forward bills that will continue to make this actually a reality. And how do we use our privilege of being like citizens, of you being citizens of Maine, and what your voice can mean in these spaces. And I think that's something that I've seen happening this recently, but there's still so much more work that needs to happen, and it's something that should not make us feel afraid, but something that should make us feel hopeful of how much room there is for like improvement. And that's like in the local space, and then in the more like international space, I've seen a lot of good movement also happening from the political and government. Recently, I think last month, Vanuatu, which is an island in the Pacific, was pushing forward climate change to be part of human rights, and that's going to mean a huge, huge boost for the United Nations in order to start framing and connecting this dissonance between climate change being something separate from us and our life within the ecosystems in which we live. So that's really helpful.
Thank you. I guess to bring things more on a municipal level again, a recent success that TCI has had is we have been trying and hosting community conversations throughout southern Maine and as well as other places. But specifically right now we're working on addressing flooding in Dock Square and Lower Village in Kennebunkport. And something that we're really trying to do with these community conversations is have them be youth-led. So this past week, actually, I hosted a training for about maybe like 20 youth in from the Kennebunkport area to train them on how to facilitate community conversation, you know, what we are trying to get out of that, ways to have these sort of discussions that can, at times and more often than not, be quite polarizing. So that is something that we are doing. We're just trying to get more youth involved in climate action, you know, because obviously we need our voices and we are going to be the ones continuing this movement forward. But then going off of that, that is obviously still something that we're working on and fighting for. I think a lot of youth feel, you know what, I think they feel like at times unsupported, but also just the opportunities and the awareness of opportunities aren't there. Like, kind of like I was saying before, like I wasn't until college that I got involved in environmental climate activism, and I grew up in Maine and loved spending time outside. So it's interesting, and you know, since I've been in this space, I'm learning more and more of these opportunities or climate educational resources and tools that I would have loved to have access to when I was younger. And I think that's something we're definitely making grounds in nowadays, you know, like hence like the youth panel, you know, all of us sitting up here. But it's definitely still something that we can work more on.
Yeah, I would just like to say that, like, I think we need to push away from, like, trying to, like, showing those, like, depressing videos of, like, how the earth is kind of falling apart, and because I think they kind of, like, make people sad rather than inspire them. So I think that's just one thing we could push away from.
Well said. Yeah, go ahead.
Also, I think it's a huge success that we're all here today. I know these are the events that we need to have as a community and as a society to inspire a new wave of environmental activism. So thank you for being here today.
That's great. So for these next few questions, if a few of you want to answer, or you all can, you know, answer, that's fine too. So how do you encourage people to make climate action and sustainable choices a priority in their lives, especially if they think that climate change doesn't impact them personally?
Something I talk about a lot is how action should derive from passion. And so people ask me often, how do you manage climate anxiety? And my answer to that is always to turn that anxiety into action. But then the other way to motivate yourself to action is to have it come from passion. To both do things that you're passionate about and fight for things in ways that you are excited about. So for example, if you are really passionate about the working waterfront, that's what you fight for. And if you are a musician, that's how you fight for it, by hosting benefit concerts. When you do things that you love, it makes it less stressful, it makes it exciting, it makes it not seem like work, and it really is a great motivator. And that's how I got into climate work, was because of a passion for birds and for ecology and for wildlife. And then I've continued staying in this work by doing things that I find really fun and that I love. So I love to learn, and I love to just find new things to kind of dive into. Like I'll get into these research spirals, and at the end I'm like, you know, we should pass a bill about that. That'd be really cool. And so just having your action come from passion just makes it easier to both be engaged and stay engaged. Because while fear can motivate you to start, it's not a sustainable way to continue acting.
Great. Anyone else? Yeah.
Yeah, I'll do something real quick. I guess the obvious answer would just to be to emphasize that like everyone is affected, like everyone should care. You know, if you live on this planet, you're a stakeholder in the future of it. And then going off of that, just emphasizing like how interdisciplinary climate action is. You know, climate justice isn't just, and I'm sure you all have heard this before, but it's not just about environmental justice. It's about economic justice, racial justice. You know, climate change issues are intertwined even with health, you know, people's health and society. And I think in that way, like, I think a lot of people fail to see how connected we really are to our natural world, or it's something that a lot of people have forgotten. So just reminding people and emphasizing it. And then also just, even if you don't care about it personally, you know, if you're just like sitting high up in whatever place that apparently isn't affected by the planet you are in, like, you just at least have, reminding people to have empathy for other people. Like, if you don't care about it, or you're not affected by it, supposedly, like somebody you know is, or even if you don't know somebody, like there's people on this planet who are, and so just reminding people that, I think somebody else already up here said that it is like a human rights issue as well.
Anyone else? Move on. Okay, thank you. Next question. How do we take care of ourselves? How do you take care of yourselves and others while you engage with this work of climate activism?
That's kind of a little bit what you mentioned of like how do you approach this work to begin with, like how whatever you do is going to create an impact in your community, on your own life, or like in the scale that you're like working with. I think it has a lot to do with like the expectations that you put for yourself, but that's like also tricky, because one thing is to be realistic and being like, okay, I want to do this certain things and this is what I want to achieve, and because I know this is doable, I won't be getting like burned out immediately. But at the same time, there's like that need for risking and pushing very, very far away, so we can actually step outside of like the frameworks that we are right now set in, and all the like ways that we've been doing things traditionally or conventionally that has brought us to where we are today, where we are like seeing so many like solutions that are part of like, the loophole of like continuing just like dust, putting dust away, but like the problem is still very rooted, and the problem and the way we approach this problem is still there. So I think like finding balance between setting yourself goals that are doable, but at the same time surrounding yourself with a community and with people who believe in you stepping forward your own goals, and you stepping forward like and reaching much farther beyond what you can imagine, so we can actually see things happening in a way that's hopeful and it will involve everyone. So I think there's that balance of like, yeah, being realistic, but at the same time imagining and like using your imagination to explore and see the realities that you want to believe in.
Combating climate change is a continuous fight, and so I think it says a lot to pace yourselves in your endeavors. If you want to make a small change in your town, that's going to take time. If you want to contact your legislatures and support a bill, that's going to take time, and it's going to take time to get an email back, or it's going to take time to connect with another person. So I think pacing yourself, taking it slow, and knowing that this is a long fight says a lot about who you are as an advocate, because it's not a field for everyone, and you need to kind of slow down and take that time to recognize what you're doing.
Yeah. For those who are here this morning, it sounds like Emmett's suggesting we are all climate muskox, right? Good. Anyone else on how you care for yourself and others?
Yeah, there are two main things I do to care for myself with climate activism, and the first one is I don't read climate news. I mean, and that's pretty controversial. People are like, you should know what you're talking about, but I feel like I've already learned enough from IPCC reports in order to act. I don't feel like I need to take in more statistics to continue acting, because I've already reached that point. Of course, I read a lot about, news about like what new policy has California done with electric vehicles, because that's inspiring and that's good. And then you want to replicate models from other areas, right? You want to figure out what was successful in other places. But I don't read carbon emissions data anymore. I don't read IPCC reports anymore, because after I read them in 2018, I was like, okay, good, I'm set. I know what's happening, and that's scary enough for me. So we're moving on that information, and so I may have some outdated figures in my head, but it was good enough to keep going. So I don't read climate news that is more technical, or like not policy or movement related. And also, I always remind myself to continue to be in what I fight for. Because sometimes I will be hunched over my desk for a long time, answering emails, doing work, 5 hours, and I realize I haven't gone outside today. What does it mean to be fighting for the earth if you don't actually enjoy it? I mean, of course it is for long term. It's not necessarily just about fighting for the right to step outside. It's about the future. But you gotta take that time to go birding and to hike and to rock climb. And these are all things I love to do, but sometimes I forget to do them. So just gotta go out and be in what you fight for, to remind yourself why you're fighting for it.
Thank you. Any other thoughts? Are we ready to open up to audience questions? Great. So we wanted to make sure we left some time. We have about 12 minutes for audience questions. Yeah, go ahead. Do you want to use the mic?
Sure. I'm sure all of you have experienced intergenerational work as you've approached, climate advocacy and action. And I just wonder, what do you consider to be the bright spots of intergenerational work? Where is it great? And what requests would you make if you could make those requests for future efforts, to things to avoid or things that you'd prefer to let go of in that effort?
Thank you.
Speaking to intergenerational problems, knowing in my area of central Maine, some elderly people can be really obstinate to to my goals, and so seeing some people here fighting for a cause that affects yourself, but also more so generations that are coming onto this earth is really inspiring, and I'm very glad to see a lot of you here.
I'll say that it's interesting to be in those spaces where you are expected to be like requesting a lot of things and like kind of pushing things, like more work to be done, but at the same time there's only so much of everything you share that it's really taken into account. And I think like that's something that I will be looking forward in more like intergenerational spaces of like how are we inviting people to be part of the table, but how much of what they say are we truly taking into account and not being just like a token with them, like not just having somebody sitting there for the fact that you can check a box and say like, oh, we have youth as part of this, but are we truly listening to what are the things that are being asked or are the things that are being said? So I think like that's a space where I would like to see some change when youth and other generations are working together.
Any other audience questions? Don? Yeah, do you want to come up or shout it out loud?
I can shout.
All right.
How do you deal with friends and family shutting down when you do your environmental spiel? Happened to me for 5 decades.
Thanks, Don. Anybody want to take that on? Don asked, how do you deal with your friends and family shutting down when you give your environmental spiel, you know? So how do you talk to those that you're close with who maybe don't agree?
I can say today I'm missing one of my lacrosse games, and when I was talking to my teammates as to why I'm missing the game and telling them about this 2030 Vision panel that I'm going to go speak in, they were like, this kid is so weird. Why is he skipping out on a sports event? And I just think that it's important to stay true to yourself, and to, like, for me to know this is an important part of my life and something that I will always fight for. So I will gladly skip any game to come and speak
I'm going straight from here to pick up my friend to get ready for prom. And she was like, why are you getting me at 5:30? Because I'm tabling for the rest of the day. And she was like, why are you getting me at 5:30? Why can't we have to, like, go get our hair and nails done? And first I was like, okay, I mean, like, not a lot of hair to get done. So it's gonna take me 30 seconds. But also, I mean, this, yes, you do have to balance your time so that, like, your social life is really important to continue doing this work and to stay happy and positive, but also how I respond to, like, when my friends or family kind of push back against that is that this also is what makes me happy. If I wasn't doing this, it would be just as frustrating as sometimes the work can be. So it's really important to me to kind of stay in that headspace. And also, going back to the intergenerational question, just because this is something that I've been talking about a lot with folks today, that people have been asking me about, is I participated in a project called Intergen, which is with PhD ecologist John Hagan, led this group of 6 youth and 6 adults to participate in conversations every month and take note of what those conversations were and how they evolved. It was really interesting, and they were all about climate action. So we would debate nuclear, we would talk about the role of corporations in climate solutions, all from the perspectives of different generations. And then so John and I wrote a paper with the results of the year-long Intergen project, and it's on Stanford Social Innovation Review. And the reason I'm bringing this up is just because a lot of people are, you know, when they're asking about intergenerational stuff, it's just easier to point towards, like, it's out there. There's something written. Just because I can't remember all the talking points from the paper. But just to plug that, if you have more questions about intergenerational work, that is a resource that exists, and we talk about some do's and don'ts.
Thank you. I think we can make that available for everybody.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Okay, so obviously my family does support me, but my friends do think it's pretty weird. But I would just say, like, obviously stay true to yourself, because, like, you're doing this for a reason, and it's to save our planet. So, yeah, that's basically it.
Good for you.
Thank you. Okay, we still have time for a few more. Yeah, way in the back.
Could you share with us one memory from your childhood that really made a difference to you in terms of this work?
Did everybody hear that?
Great question.
Yeah. Okay, a memory from your childhood that connects to this work.
It's probably going to the aquarium and then watching those really, really sad videos about, like, the whales and stuff. You just, like, start crying and tearing up. So that's probably how I got inspired by it.
And the first convergence.
Did you go to one of the convergences?
Oh, yeah.
Gonna pass it. Anybody else?
Yes, Mom, you did that.
Love that. I guess I'm not even sure if I have, like, one memory, so I know this might not, like, necessarily answer the question, but just, like, I don't know, I really loved Calvin and Hobbes when I was little, and so just reading those comics and seeing all the adventures that Calvin and Hobbes went on, like, I would take my cat, who was a real cat, and she did not appreciate this, but I would take my real cat on, like, similar adventures. And, like, I don't know, like, I've lived in a lot of different places, like, all throughout central Maine, but, like, at one point I lived on a farm, and that was just, like, really special, like, just getting to, like, explore in the woods behind my house and, like, the fields and, like, see all, like, the horses and the animals and things like that. And I think that's something that really has stood out, and it's, like, gotten me, you know, I'm sure this was the point of your question, but it's gotten me involved in, like, caring and being passionate. And the work that I'm doing today is like protecting the animals and the places and the people, and that's everything like that I like care about. And I think it's just really important to foster connection when you're trying to incorporate like climate education for students. You know, it's one thing to just be like, okay, here's a lesson, or here's some scary videos and things like that. Like, now you should go out and do something about it. Like, people obviously are going to try harder at whatever it is they're doing if they care about it. So you need to, as Anna was saying, like, go out and enjoy the spaces and really hopefully get some of these like outdoor recreational opportunities for youth, so that they do feel like, okay, this is a place that I'm a part of and I belong and I'm connected to it and I want to do whatever I can to save it.
Yeah, another question?
What is the state, in your opinion, of climate education where you go to school now?
I'll start this one too, if that's all right. So, like I said, I kind of went to a variety of schools throughout central Maine, and it was non-existent in my public schools. And that's why I didn't even know really what environmental activism was or anything like that until I got to college. And granted, maybe that was also just me being busy with a bunch of other things and kind of head in the sand, but it wasn't like taught in our schools. Like, I don't even think I took an environmental sciences class as part of science. Like, we had biology and physics and chemistry and things like that, but environmental science should be in there at the very least. And so it's just non-existent, and I'm hoping that we can change that going forward. And it seems like we already are on our way, but it could be better.
I went to school at College of Atlantic in Bar Harbor. So the education there, it's like very, we have a lot of resources, and the professors have a lot of different approaches, very interdisciplinary, like somebody else mentioned here, like how to think about not climate crisis, but the climate justice. But yeah, I think like us talking to other college students from other universities somewhere else in Maine, it's very interesting to see how maybe the idea of like climate justice is not so much spoken, and there's more like the idea of like the environmental issues, but maybe it's that lack of awareness of, oh, it's not only the environment, it's like everything else that it's also part of your life. So I think like in that aspect, at the university that I went to, it was very, very well available.
At my high school that I attend, we'd have an ecology unit in biology, and that's the extent that I've taken. I think we do offer an environmental science class that I've not taken, but I soon to be will. I will. That is actually how I got passionate about this line of work, though, is I had a terrific teacher in the ecology, and it was so thorough, and I learned about all the effects of CO2 emissions and such, and that's why I'm here. So I have a lot to say about the teachers that will step outside that box and teach more to the side of climate change than they are required to in their curriculum.
Yay, teachers!
I've been to a bunch of different schools. I wasn't expelled, just how it ended up. But I've been to a lot of different schools, public and private, and across the board, my experience is that private schools have more time, flexibility, and allowance and money to invest in civic and climate education. And that's not a compliment to private schools. That's more of an insult on the inability of the state to provide the opportunity for public schools. And so I got into climate work because of a teacher at a private school who felt like he could dedicate a lot of his science unit to not just talk about what climate was, but also how we could get engaged in it. And so he brought in like 350 materials, 350.org materials, and got us out to Fridays for Future protests, and kind of took that extra step because the school wasn't worried about being too political or anything like that. Because it was a private school, they felt like they could do that. And that was my middle school. And the school I go to now, I wouldn't say the climate education is great. I mean, there's an environmental science class, but we do have a civic engagement challenge, which you need to do to graduate. You need to do it every single year. So every single year you had to check off a certain number of boxes, whether it's things like voting, contacting a representative, going to a protest. Some of them are like walk around your neighborhood and take note of what you observe, but the point is about getting kids out there, and you have to do it every single year. And so that's something that we can do because we're a private school and they feel like they can get political, even though it is just civic engagement and being a democratic citizen, a constituent. So I think that is a really unfortunate disparity that private schools feel like they have the leeway to do that and public schools cannot.
Yeah, one more thought.
So over this, like my entire school year, this year, we've only watched one video on climate change and the effects of it, and we didn't have a discussion about it or anything, which obviously it's not like my teacher's fault or anything, it's just that like we don't have room for it in the curriculum or something. So I think we just need to find a way to like add it in, like even just like a little, like maybe like a week on it each school year, so people just are staying aware and like it's on their radar. So.
That's great. Thank you. I see more questions, but for the sake of time, we're going to leave it there. I'd encourage you to chat with our panelists, chat with each other on these topics throughout the rest of the afternoon, and please give a big round of applause to our panelists.